guys, welcome back to Christine's Culinary Quest, and I'm Christine. And for today's episode, I was actually over at my parents' house and we were making pizza for the football game, and we've been considering like different pizza crust options to do because both my mom and I have different food sensitivities to gluten, flour, different sweeteners and thickeners and lots of different things. And so we wanted to try making pizza crusts in a different way to see how they turned out. So mom made a pizza crust with cauliflower flour, and I made a pizza crust using sweet potato. So we're gonna walk you through those recipes. Mom, how did you make your cauliflower flour recipe? Go ahead and walk us through the steps.
Well, I wanted to try cauliflower flour pizza crust because it was supposed to be very healthy, but none of the recipes that I was finding on the internet started with flour. It all started with boiling a head of cauliflower and chopping it up, pureeing it, mixing it with stuff, and that's how you would do your crust. Well, I already had a bag of flour, of cauliflower flour. So I wanted to use that. So what I did was I made up a recipe, and it was a combination of cauliflower flat tortillas recipe and an actual traditional pizza crust recipe. Where it differed is I used 2/3 of the cauliflower flour and 1/3 regular AP flour. The recipe for the tortilla called for using baking powder, and the recipe for the pizza crust called for using yeast in its dried form as a powder. So we used a combination of those for our pizza crust, added the salt and 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, and then mixed it with warm water. So we'll take the dough, put it into a bowl, cover everything with oil so that it doesn't stick to the bowl. It'll be easier to get it back out, and it won't stick to the plastic wrap. It'll keep it moist. And let it rise for about 45 minutes or so. Then you knead it down to get the air out of it because we did put yeast into it. So we need to get the air back out. So the cauliflower dough was not a gluten dough, meaning that it didn't become elastic, like you could pull it apart and it would stay together. This was more like you pull it apart, it's gonna break. So whenever you see me kneading it, I'm really just trying to get a smooth surface. I'm trying to get the oil that's on the outside from sitting in the bowl. I'm just trying to get that kind of incorporated so it's not all on the outside, and get the air released because there was yeast in it. So I was trying to get the air released. That's why I was kneading it, was getting the air out and getting the oils worked in, but I wasn't trying to get it to a point where it had gluten and was smooth and elastic. I would have kneaded it for at least 10 minutes to get the gluten activated in it. Then we put it onto wax paper on top of the pie pan because we're cooking our pizzas on a pizza stone, and we found it much easier and safer to get the pizzas into the oven on a pizza stone whenever they were on some type of paper that we could just slide into the oven. It gave us more stability. It gave us something to get the dough from the table, from the counter to the oven and back out again without getting burned by trying to reach in and finagle this thing. Because when you're dealing with a pizza oven, we're talking 400, 450, if not higher temperatures. That pizza stone is as hot as that oven. And the oven doors are hot, the racks are hot. It's for a safety issue that you do it in such a way that you are not putting yourself at danger. So whenever I do traditional pizzas, I will start with a flat round disc in the center of the pan, and I will use the heel of my hand rolling towards the fingers and rotating out like that so that I am pressing the bulk of the dough away from the middle towards the edges. And then whenever I feel like I've got it completely flat, I will look for places where there's more dough here or more dough there, and I'll press it in circular motions around the pizza, or I'll put my hand and actually pull areas so that I flatten them out. I'll make it nice and round, and I'll even do like you do with hamburger patties, where I put my hand on the edge of the dough and I press it into it so that I go all the way around, making the edges nice and smooth and pretty. My mama always said, if you're gonna make food, you might as well make it pretty so that, you know, people actually want to eat.
Right. She did a good job. It turned out good. We liked it.
It was interesting. I prefer yeasty bread, but okay, let's put a little bit of healthy.
And you also took a fork and you were poking holes in the
Yes.
pizza crust, right?
Yes, so after I pressed it out, made sure it was a nice round shape, I took a fork and I just made lines all the way across it. And the reason why I did that was because when you're dealing with a yeast bread, the yeast, as it's warming up, will produce gas. And that's what makes the bread rise. So we want our crust to stay nice and flat and uniform. And so we put a lot of fork holes in it. Yes, we did.
A lot of fork holes.
A lot of them.
Yeah, fork holes. That's what we're calling them.
Forking holes.
Fork.
I mean, somebody royally forked up. Somebody forked up. Why can't I say fork?
If you're trying to curse, you can't hear. I guess a lot of people in this neighborhood don't like it, so it's prohibited.
That's bullshit.
The recipe called for putting the oil on top of the dough before you cooked it, and I didn't do that. So we tried it two different ways, where we added the oil before and the oil after. And I will say that adding the oil before is definitely the way to go, because when you bring it out of the oven and it's bread and it's hot and you try to put oil on it, it just soaks up the oil so much faster than if you were to put it on plain dough before it goes in the oven. So we put the pizza crust into the oven and baked it for roughly about 10-15 minutes till it was set, till it was dough and it had enough stability to it that we could pull it back out and start decorating it with what we wanted to put on it.
They just cook it in the oven until the toppings are like warmed up, the cheese melts, and then it's done, right?
Yeah, seriously, not more than probably 8 to 10 minutes. I mean, just look at your toppings, and whenever you feel like it's done, it's done. If you would like it to be a little bit crispier on top, if you'd like a little bit of a brown tinge to your melted cheese, let it cook for maybe 5 minutes and then turn it on to broil for about 5 minutes, but be prepared to watch it. Don't walk away from anything that's in the oven that's on broil.
Right. So if you have any ingredients like kimchi, onion, stuff like that, where you want it to be a little bit softer or more fully cooked, once the pizza is done cooking, you probably want to cook those a little bit ahead of time before adding them onto your pizza, because it's not going to get a whole lot of cooking in the oven. It's really just going to heat up, melt all together, and then you take it back out.
You put raw on top of your pizza, you're going to get semi-raw back. So on my pizza, I used traditional things. I put a garlic marinara on it. I put the mozzarella shredded cheese on next. And then I put shredded Italian sausage that we had already cooked.
Bacon.
And some peppered bacon strips that I had made that morning. I chopped up and I sprinkled that on it. And then because I like the toppings to hold together whenever you're handling the pizza, I don't like the sausage so far away from the cheese that it's just rolling on the top and you can actually lose your toppings. So I put extra cheese on the top to secure the toppings and make them stay in place. And I think it's prettier. And then I dusted it with a little bit of basil, dried basil.
As far as the consistency, the flavor, how did you find that substituting some cauliflower flour into the recipe and combining it with sort of like that mixture between the pizza crust recipe and the cauliflower flour tortilla recipe, how did you find that end result turned out?
A traditional pizza crust has gluten. So whenever you're biting into it, you feel that chewy texture. You feel that traditional white flour pizza crust texture. The cauliflower pizza definitely did not have a gluten factor to it. It tasted like a flatbread that was not chewy. It was more bread-like. It was more like a biscuit type texture. I had added yeast in this experiment because in a traditional pizza crust you use yeast. With this texture of pizza dough, I do not feel like the yeast was beneficial. I feel like it would have been better because of the texture if it had stayed a flatbread recipe where we only used the baking powder. It was still good, but it was different, and I feel like the yeast caused it to rise too much to where the point was it didn't feel like the type of texture I want. So the next time I make it, I will be leaving out the yeast just to see what that does with the recipe. And so there may be a reshoot or a retry of the cauliflower pizza crust recipe.
Right, it wasn't as sweet as
and you could
pizza
still
crust is.
taste cauliflower. Yes, you could.
She says that,
I
but there's
don't
tons of
want
times where she says you
cauliflower.
can still taste stuff, and I can't taste it at all. She's more sensitive to the flavor than I am.
I don't like the vegetables, so I can still taste them. Yes, I can
Right.
still taste them.
From the perspective of someone who doesn't like vegetables, you can taste it. From someone who doesn't mind vegetables, you may not notice.
I can tell if a pickle has ever touched my hamburger. I'm just saying. And Christine, you did a sweet potato pizza crust.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you come up with your recipe? Because
So
I had nothing to do with it.
So I actually came up with the sweet potato pizza crust recipe by comparing some sweet potato pizza crust recipes that were online and some breadstick recipes for how to make breadsticks out of sweet potatoes. And the basic idea is that you use a combination of cheese and eggs and flour to create sort of like a cohesive element in the pizza crust. And so you just basically take a sweet potato and you peel it and you chop it up into little bits, and then you either run it through like a food processor, or if you don't have a food processor, chop it up really small, much smaller than we did, and run it through a blender, hopefully a powerful one so that it's not killing your blender. But you run it through the blender until you get very, very fine chopped pieces, similar to like sea salt chunks, like coarse salt. So you get your sweet potato to the point where it's very finely chopped, almost like large salt sort of a texture, and then you put it into a bowl, add 1 egg, half a cup of almond flour. This is important. Different flours will react differently.
I was so impressed I had almond flour in my house. I had cauliflower and almond flour
And regular flour.
and coconut flour. I don't know what we're making with coconut flour, but
So many
Wow.
options.
and I've never used any of them until now. Go ahead with your story.
She's getting all experimental. But yeah, so you take your sweet potato that you've ground up, and you add 1 egg, half a cup of almond flour, a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic, and you can add extra flavoring if you want, but that was all we used. You just mix it all together, and as the flour and the egg and the cheese and all the different seasonings come together, it starts to create like not quite a dough.
I would say that it's more the texture of if you've ever made a graham cracker crust. You have the graham crackers, you put a little bit of butter into it and a little bit of sugar, and you mix it together, and it looks like it's very crumbly. But whenever you grab a chunk of it and you press it together, it stays pressed together. So that's how you make the crust, is whenever you press it into the pie pan and you put it all together, it as it cooks, as it melts together and stuff, it actually creates a crust.
Right. And when we were making it, we sort of expected it to smell like and taste like sweet potato.
Yeah.
And then we baked it and we took it out of the oven, and it sort of smelled like cheese crisps, which was weird.
It looked like a cheese crisp. It
Right.
looked like you took a great big huge mound of cheddar cheese and put it into a circle and melted it until it was nice and crispy, and you take it out of the oven and you're like, what did we just make? We actually had it in a mixing bowl with a dough hook and started to mix it with the dough hook and realized very quickly that was not going to work because the grated sweet potato just kind of went, It was like mixing coconut in a bowl. So we took it out, put it in a regular bowl with a spoon, and quickly saw, okay, we see what we're working with now.
Yeah, so yeah, it'll smell and look a lot like a cheese crisp just because it's got the toasted cheese in it. And the sweet potato...
It smelled very garlicky too.
Yeah, it smells very garlicky too. And sweet potato doesn't really have a lot of flavor, even though like when you think of sweet potato and sweet potato casserole and whatever, you think of like sweet and dessert and whatever, but that's just because it takes on the flavor of vanilla and cinnamon and all the different things that it gets seasoned with so well, which is why it works really great in this case as a pizza crust, because whatever spices you put into it, it's going to take on those flavors.
The garlic is going to overwhelm the other subtle flavors
the
of
garlic,
the sweet potato.
the toasted cheese, the fat from the egg. It all sort of blends together and it sort of creates like more like a cheddar cracker sort of a taste. Yeah, so we put on lots of kimchi, some chicken, some bacon, and some cheese and a little bit of mushroom, just because Dad and I like mushroom. And we had juice from the kimchi that sort of got all over the pizza, so we didn't put a lot of sauce on it, but it probably would go well with marinara sauce if anybody wants to try that at home, because the sweetness of the sauce and the saltiness of the sort of cheese flavor of the crust would really go well together. If you wanted to try to make it more like taste like a sweet potato crust for like your own modifications though, I would add maybe like a teaspoon to a tablespoon of vanilla and a little bit of cinnamon, and butter or brown sugar, depending on how you prefer your sweet potato to taste. And then, you know, use like barbecue chicken or kimchi or cheddar cheeses or things like that to pair properly with that. But we made a lot of different kinds of pizza. We found that it was a lot of fun to try to experiment and try ingredients in ways that maybe we haven't before doing pizza, like trying the Tostitos cheese as a sauce instead of as a cheese, or using kimchi as an ingredient, or sweet potato in the crust.
You've been wanting to put kimchi on a pizza for quite a while now.
I mean, we've done it before, but kimchi good on pizza.
A lifelong goal has just been achieved.
My goal, as far as pizza and kimchi, is to get this one to have a pizza with kimchi.
Sorry for you.
We did not make it.
Maybe next year.
Try again. I think like what we hope that people get out of these recipes the most is that there are foods that like everyone is familiar with or everybody has had a lot of times, and when we start to have food a lot of times or the same way repeatedly, it's very easy to get into a mindset where you get used to having the same thing on the food all the time. You get used to just getting a 3 meat, just getting a pepperoni, just getting a meat lovers or a supreme or whatever, all the different kinds of things that you can get on a pizza, or thinking of pizza in terms of like, it's only pizza if it has regular crust with the gluten and all the different stuff, and then you try to eat healthier, or you realize that you have food sensitivities or restrictions, or you know, if you become diabetic, different things, you have to figure out how to adjust your diet. So it's really just our hope that this video helps people to think about recipes different and sort of imagine ways that they can adjust them, like using cheese as a sauce instead of as the cheese part of a recipe, using veggies to make breads.
Also being courageous and getting out there and looking at what it is that you would like to try to make. And don't look at just one recipe, look at several different recipes so you get an idea of what other people are doing and adding, and the things that they have found work for them, and come up with your own design. And don't be scared of going out on a limb and trying something nobody else has ever tried, or putting together combinations that you haven't seen anybody else put together before, because every single time you cook something, it's a learning experience. You learn what you like and don't like, you learn what works and doesn't work, and every time you do it, you get a little bit better at making that particular dish or cooking. So don't be scared to try different things.
Right, and to learn like why you do things in a recipe or don't do things in a recipe. Like poking the holes into the pizza crust so that it helps release air bubbles
from yeast.
Right, learning what the reasons are behind the different steps in a recipe really helps you to combine recipes, alter them for your own preferences, your own sensitivities, or things that you can or can't have. And it really helps you to just be able to make better and better recipes using ingredients that maybe a lot of people don't have, like bok choy. Bok choy is amazing and I love it. And it helps you expand what you eat and what you think about as far as like foods that taste good, or it just expands the options, which helps make it a lot easier for you to eat healthy if that's what you're trying to do.
And it's fun.
Right. All I know is like trying to eat healthy at the beginning of this year, when I started trying to eat healthier and like trying to work more vegetables into my diet, and all of a sudden realizing that mostly I only eat the same 6 vegetables on rotation, and being like, I don't know what other vegetables to even try. Like, I was really blessed to be able to be in a group where people were like, oh, have you tried bok choy? Have you tried kimchi? Have you tried like miso soup, this Indian curry, like all these different things that maybe I've eaten, but I haven't thought of cooking it myself, or different things, which was really helpful. But I know some people maybe like try to start eating healthy and then they just get stuck, and there's not somebody really to give them ideas for places to start looking. So I hope this is that for you. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you had a lot of fun watching it. Look forward to the next video. We're going to talk about how to make biscotti at home, and I'll also be prepping some videos coming up on how to use leftover pickling juice and a couple other recipes. So stay tuned and be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Bye! See you next week.